Hi guys. Oh my god, my laundry. Can you see my cat? This is like a $5 cat from Uniqlo. Yeah. So, anyway, let's sit with my cat because I can't have a cat in Japan. So, yeah. Here's what I got. Anyway, there's another question right here. I am bombarded with questions. I haven't checked YouTube yet, but these are from Facebook. So, wait, I got to send the guy who asked me a question, and I uploaded his a video for him. So he was asking about school, by the way. Anyway, uh-huh. Let me send it first. Okay, there we go. So anyway, here's the other question. There's this guy, he's planning to date a Filipino in, in his country right now. So he's currently living in United States, and he was asking me because he also dated Filipinos back in the Philippines, but he's just a little bit confused. So, what is his question is what is the difference between Filipinas abroad, and Filipinas living in the Philippines? Now that's a very tricky question. Um, well, let me put it this way. We're all Filipinos, but yeah, so basically we're still all the same. We have the same values. Like maybe we really care about our family. We even though we want to ignore them, we still want to help them. But then again, some Filipinos on the other hand, they really don't need to help their families because their families, they can sustain their living in the Philippines. So there are two sides, it depends on their social status, as always. That's how the society works. But is there a difference between how they think because they're exposed to different culture? I can say that as a yes. So let me talk about it. Maybe next time we can also ask some of my friends to discuss this. So here it is. Actually, I think, in my personal opinion, there are huge differences and there are also some similarities. Now let's talk about at least five similarities. I think some similarities that we have is number one, we care about our family. So even though I would tell you guys that I don't really need to help my family, but because of this pandemic, I still have to help them. Like you couldn't just let them out and ignore them and so on. So one way or another, you might do it even if you don't want to. So that's one thing because it's ingrained in our culture to help these people. So, they're our family and that's what family does, right? So we you try to help each other. And then number two, Filipinas usually we we actually enjoy meeting friends. So that's one thing that has never changed wherever you go. We love being with our friends, meeting friends, and so on. And then the usage of social media and other small things, but mainly it's the family and that's it. Now, Mira, what are the differences? Number one, again, it's the family. So even though it is our biggest, similarity, there's a difference on how we would like to help our family. Let's say in a Filipina abroad would of course prioritize her family, but on the other hand, some of them or most of them, they already have these ideas on how to manage their finances well. It is because maybe the culture that they saw in that country, like, oh, people in this country are saving money. Maybe I should do that too. I'm not getting any younger. So these things gets into their mind and then they don't give everything. They give some of the amounts that they earn, like they set aside for themselves or save a little bit money for themselves. Or like for example, they're married to a foreigner. Of course, a foreigner, like maybe if they're really well off and they're willing, they want their wives to stay home to become stay-at-home moms, which is also okay for Filipinas. Well, then but then in exchange of that, some Filipinas would tell their husbands like, hey, since my family, they're only they have been, dependent on me. Maybe if you want me to do stay at home, you have to cover for the amount of money that I used to give them. Or maybe if they're single parents, no judgment, like they still have to support the kids. So those things are a bit different. Like, maybe when, instead of in the Philippines, like I think some Filipinas, they would just focus on their families because they don't have enough money to give to their parents. But when they go abroad, they would have like a negotiation with their husband, or even like like they would go to work, like, okay, this is part of my salary, I'm gonna set it back home, and then this one I'm gonna share it with rent or some utilities that we have, and then so on and so forth. So our priority with our family never changes, but our mindset changes just a little bit. Like in the Philippines, we just try to give it all. It is because it's how we were raised. Give back to your parents, give back to your family. And most of them, they become retirement plans for their, parents. It doesn't sound good, but it happens. And parents think it's just right. Like, hey, I gave birth to you, you have to give me money. Some parents do think that way, not all, but some. So a lot of Filipinos get really stressed about it. That's why rule for me, it's always better to like stay away from the family, to have a bit of distance, so that when you see each other, you miss each other. Like, okay, I miss you so much, I got this for you. So something like that. Number two, in terms of goals. So a lot of Filipinas, in maybe because they're earning enough money and they live in another country, they have different goals. Like they want to build a house for their family again, and then they want to save money, and then they get insurance plans and so on, life insurance plans, and so on and so forth. In this case, they would actually make quite, they have a different goal, like in terms of having that mindset. But in the Philippines, they have a goal, but on the other hand, there are a lot of temptations. Like when I was in the Philippines, I couldn't save money. Why? Because my friends can text me any time of the day, like, hey Mira, let's meet after work. Okay, let's go. Or your coworkers, hey Mira, let's drink after work. Okay, let's go. There would even be, with my previous video, you would know how much I'm earning as an English teacher, and it's way, way much higher than other Filipinos. And I still end up borrowing money from my father. So that's how bad it is. So that's a little bit of the difference. And then, yeah, that certain part of, having, maybe because I'm surrounded by friends, I just want to have fun. It's YOLO, you only live once. But on the other hand, when you're living abroad, maybe, we have to schedule everything. All of your friends are working. Maybe on your day off, your friend is working. Or when it's their day off, you're working. You have to schedule everything. To be honest with you, if I meet my friends, on a lucky day, I'm just very lucky to meet them, for an hour or two. So it's really, really important. There's no time for that. But on the other hand, because I don't go out that much, I save money. So that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. So that's a different type of goal. Now, Philip, another difference that we have is, when it comes to, you know let's move on from that. How about their way of thinking? Mira, what if I marry a Filipina in United States and blah blah blah, or they become too westernized? If you guys, no matter what you do, a Filipina has to become westernized in some ways when they move abroad. Even though you got married in the Philippines and you moved to another country, of course, a huge part of their Filipino habits would still be there. Especially me, I'm already, sitting with my feet crossed right now, and then I just ate Filipino food a few minutes ago, and but we have to adapt, not because we don't want we want to, but we have to. What if you guys have kids? What if she wants to have a job to help her family and she doesn't want to bother you with those expenses? So they have to adopt in some cases, but a huge part of that, their Filipino culture still stays within them. Now, some foreigners, they might want their wives to change a little bit and get accustomed to saving money, sharing the bill, and so on. Because it's quite different in the Philippines, where man usually pays for most of the huge expenses, and women, so usually we are stay-at-home moms. Think of 1960s, United States, perhaps like that. So, but because of social media, these things also changes. So we cannot really depend on that. But on the other hand, they have to change even just a little bit, just to adapt, and so that they can keep their sanity. So that's not something that you can prevent. Like, oh, when I brought my wife to United States, she starts thinking about money too much. Well, it's normal because maybe you guys have expenses, or she's preparing for your kids, right? I mean, maybe she can remain as a Filipino, but her child has to grow up in a society where it's competitive, or so on and so forth. So those changes are just minimal. Now, Mira, how about their bodies? Well, a lot of Filipinos abroad gain weight like me. But a lot of Filipinos in the Philippines, well, in my hometown, they gain weight. So when I got home, I'm like, oh yeah, this is my hometown. We all got a little bit chubby together. But when I came back to Japan, everyone is slim again. But anyway, a lot of Filipinas in the Philippines, they they have, they're quite healthy, or vegetables is cheap in my country. So now, but when they move, when other Filipinas who go to another country, well, at first, we get excited with the food. American chocolates, these are so expensive in the Philippines. So, of course, I'm going to eat as much as I want. Those Godiva, Hershey's chocolates, and so on, which are so cheap in United States and other countries. But when you go back to the Philippines, they're like gold. So, we want to enjoy them for some time, and then we gain weight, and then we lose it again. I hope I will lose mine. But anyway, those are some subtle differences. Now, what are other differences about a Filipina who is actually working abroad and back, and a Filipina working in the Philippines? I think one thing is, when you're working abroad, you tend to get lonely because you don't have much friends to talk to, and then you indulge too much on SNS. That's why a lot of Filipinas in Middle East, they're looking for a lover, or they fall in love with someone who they haven't met yet, which is okay. But on Facebook, and then they trust this person so much, they send money. And yes, guys, Filipina abroad, they get scammed because they they needed that attention that we don't get because we are working in another country. And then when this guy shows interest, and then they just fall in love. That's why there's Stolfo. A lot of people are going there because they sent, the last one I saw, she sent an amount of 1.6 million pesos to the guy because she thought they were in love, but it turns out it wasn't, right? So we are more vulnerable, I guess. But on the other hand, because we don't have enough support system, but I think we are also strong on the other hand because we're surviving in another country. So maybe our personality, when we talk to foreigners, we're a bit more confident. On the other hand, Filipinas in the Philippines, they still got it, they still have this colonial mentality that maybe foreigners are way better than us, and then they lose a little bit of their confidence. Just, I'm not saying all, but some of them. And but on the other hand, they're also confident in some ways because they have a support system. Like, if they get brokenhearted, you can call a friend and drink. But in abroad, like, I broke my heart. Like, you want to call your friend, like, they will say, Mira, I'm sorry, I'm working, let's cry tomorrow. Like, what? Right? So those are the differences that we have. Others are minimal. Maybe next time I can talk about it. Like, yeah, just minimal things. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you're actually looking for a lover, just remember, at the end of the day, A person is different. You know, there we are all different regardless of where we grew up. Of course, as you know, I'm studying psychology. As you know, the environment has a huge factor, but deep inside, we will look for it. You know, that place where we came from, and you will go back to that, you know, place where you came from, what you got used to. So don't be afraid to date a Filipino, whether they are in the Philippines or abroad. Just be careful if they're scammers or not. So just that one. And if you have further questions, please ask me right down below. And then follow my Facebook, my page, or add me over my Facebook for this one. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something. Thank you.